do we become like them? Is the key. How? So several parts. It breaks down into 5 parts, and we're going to go through them today. So 5 parts to tell us that 5 steps, that's how we can become like them. Even though it's talking about it's only 5, but each step is huge, okay? Very difficult. But sometimes if you're willing to do it, it's just like that. Just do it right away. It's accomplished. So is it difficult? To some individual, it's impossible. To some individual, it's as easy as saying, yes, I do. Okay, so it's very straightforward, okay? So 5 parts, let's talk about it. Number 1, precepts, samadhi, and wisdom. And this is a continuation of what we were just talking about. So what are they? Precepts, samadhi, and wisdom. And these are the 3 studies, okay? 三无漏学, 3 studies, okay? So what are the precepts? Precepts help us prevent or guard against something. What is this something? What is it guarding you against? What is it that it's guarding you? It's helping you guard against what? Something. What is this something? It's very, very crucial. I think a lot of people think of precepts. A lot of people think about precepts. It's like, oh, thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal. And that it's almost like the 10 Commandments, right? So every religion has these rules telling you that you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this. Many people think of the precepts as restrictions. They bind you, right? They sort of put these ropes around you. They tied you up so that you cannot do anything, right? You cannot steal, you cannot kill, you cannot do all these things, right? So many people think of precepts as such. They are limiting you. They're making sure that you don't do stupid things, okay? They stop you, okay? But what is the precept guarding against? And I think once you get this, and I think it's a very, I don't want to say novel idea, but it's something that it's a concept, it's a conception that if you're able to get through in Buddhism or in Tzu, you're going to find that you are going to be so much happier because you no longer think of this as something that's binding you. Instead, what are you going to think of precept as? It's basically making sure that you don't do something unknowingly. Think about this for a second. There are so many things that you unknowingly are doing. For example, like me, before I became a vegetarian, all the food that I eat, did I think about what I was eating? No. Did I know that I was taking lives? Yes. But I didn't think of it. I think of it was very normal. I think of it as, yeah, sure. Everybody was eating it. I was growing up. My parents was teaching me, they're teaching me to be a good person, but it didn't tell me not to eat meat. They didn't tell me about taking lives of animals just so that we can feed ourselves. No one told me, right? So at the time, you thought it was just normal. Unknowingly, we're doing many things that we didn't know was not exactly right, but we're doing them. Even right now, we might be saying things that we unknowingly are hurting people. Unknowingly, we're stepping on people without knowing. And I think doing these things to hurt people or to unknowingly, you didn't do it deliberately. It's not like you do it on purpose, but you hurt other people. You hurt their feelings or you violated them, you didn't know. That's the worst part. You didn't even know that you screwed up, but you did. So what happened? The next time you see this person, they give you this expression, like they hate you, they hate your guts, and you don't even know why. Because you did something you didn't even know. Precept guards you against doing something that you didn't know. And that's what they're supposed to help you, right? So for example, our 10 precepts, we have one that says, do not kill, do not take lives. And why? Because sometimes, not sometimes, but all the time, when you take lives, the lives that you're taken, they're going to remember you. But you didn't realize, like, when I was back then not a vegetarian, I lived my life for 20 plus years without being a vegetarian. I didn't become vegetarian until I think 24, 25. So for the, quarter century, 25 years, I was just, eating lives without knowing. And it's supposed to help us to guard against doing something that we didn't know. Because there's so many things that you didn't know that you're doing. And so precepts help you to make sure that we don't do something that we didn't even realize it was wrong. And it's not your fault, but you're still doing something that was bad. And so something will come around, and that's not good. So I think precepts, it's not just something that binds you and says, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's something to make us think one more step. Am I doing this? Are there somebody that are hurt because of what I say? Are there somebody that's hurt because of what I do? And I'm not saying this to make people feel bad. I'm saying this so that we are awakened in our head to think one step further, to think for one more person, not just myself, but one more person. Am I saying this and somebody might not feel so good about it? Am I doing something that might unknowingly hurt somebody? That's what precepts allow us to be more aware. Allow us to have that thought. Are you sure this is something that you want to do? Are you sure you're not hurting somebody or hurting someone when you do this? That's what precepts do. So it's not something that binds you. It's something that tries to protect you from doing something that you don't know unknowingly to hurt others and putting down that very evil seeds. Okay. So what about samadhi and wisdom? Going back to the story about Shariputra and his eyes, we talked about making the right decision. Samadhi is the Sanskrit word for tranquil, for peacefulness. And so when you're able to reach the state of samadhi, you're able to be very clear-minded. You're able to be very, very calm. And because you're calm, you can think clearly. You can think without the influences of the things that might affect you, that might sway you left and right. And then we will have the wisdom to allow us to make the right decision. So once again, it all comes from let's making sure, think deeper. When we do something, the precepts are there to remind us, am I doing this? Is this what I'm doing that's going to be okay? Or am I going to hurt somebody unknowingly? To stop for a second, to think more about this, and then you reach that state of calm and clear-mindedness, and then you're able to make the right decision. So once we're able to do this, reaching this still mind, peacefulness, no delusion, we're no longer making decisions based on what we want or what we desire. We're making this decision purely based on logic, based on reason. There's no traces of how I like and what I like. Imagine that, somebody come and ask you, should I wear this or should I wear that? And you're telling them, but you're telling them with this traces of idea about what you want, what you like. And that's going to be traces of what we want. And that's not completely still or samadhi. And that's why Master is telling us, and even the Sutra is telling us, how do you reach this samadhi? How do you reach this peacefulness, this mind that are tranquil, right? So Master says, it is important to understand that Bodhisattva's minds are tranquil and still, unaffected by outside worldly conditions. So how do you reach that? How do you reach the state of tranquil and still mind? How? Master says, be able to let go of whatever they have done at any time without being attached to what they have done at all. Now, this sounds very cryptic. What exactly does it mean? What does that mean? It means that whatever you have done in the past is something that you have done in the past already. Whatever that you haven't done, you haven't done. So making the decision based on right now, based on our past experience, based on our future projection, let's make sure that we are making the decisions on this. And then we learn from the experience, and then we move on to the next steps. Don't let it be affected by our, attachment to, oh, I like that feeling. I like it when they're all saying good things about me. So that's why I'm going to pick this decision over the others, right? So it's very simple to be clouded. It's very simple to be affected. Now, this part is very difficult. It's not like I can explain this and then everybody goes out and then say, oh yeah, thank you to Brother Joe. We're able to find this still mind and peacefulness. This requires practice. And where do we find this practice? Among the people. There are going to be people that we like. There are going to be people that we don't like. Yet, among the people that we like, we're able to find that we are to be very objective, that we're able to be very clear-minded, not saying things because I like him or not like him, not saying things because I want them to hear this or etc. But you're saying things that actually fit the occasion. And that's very difficult. That's very difficult. So Master is taking us one step at a time to explain to us, how do we get there? How do we get there? So Master says, the bodhisattvas in this world do not have desires of their own. They resolve only to save and transform sentient beings. Okay, so now there's a very clear target there. When is it that you're not going to think about yourself? In human beings, we are designed to look out for ourselves, right? I can feel myself, but I can't feel you. So I know when I like something, but I don't know when you like something. So obviously, I'm going to think about what I like, and I'm going to think about what I don't like, right? If I'm hot, I'm going to turn on that fan or that AC. I don't know that you're cold, but when I turn on the fan and the AC, you're going to be cold. But because I can only feel myself, so it's natural for me to do the things that I only feel. But when masters start talking about, that's why we start to thinking about those that are suffering. Start to think in their place. What do they need? What can we do to help them? Then slowly, we are now shrinking that I, the me in all these things. You begin to think about how sad that all those people have nothing now. They have lost everything. You begin to fill your mind and thoughts about their suffering. When you begin to feel that way, the I, the me in everything begins to shrink. You begin to think more about what these people need. What can I do to help them? That's the simplest way. Instead of try to shrink the me, you enlarge the them. You make the other people bigger. You focus on their hurting, you focus on their needs, and all of a sudden, you forget about yourself. That's the most straightforward way. And I can kid you not, I'm sure you all have this experience, right? A mother who sees the child is in danger, they're going to have this adrenaline rush to not fear and then go charge and save their child. And sometimes it's not even just their child. Sometimes you see someone who needs help. I remember this story that, there was a fire and this young man who was, recently in the Taiwan fire, who was going to the room, and it was just a good Samaritan, just a good a person just walking by. He rushes in and saves about 5 or 6 people out of the burning building. Now, they're saying that we shouldn't do this when we're untrained. But this guy was built. This young man was built, and he went in and he grabbed people out and he went in again, right? So when their thoughts were resolved to saving these people, they're gonna overlook themselves, and that's when we're able to sort of put down all the attachment, So that's why this sutra, it matches perfectly with what Tzu Chi is doing. Because the sutra talks about getting there, but Tzu Chi talks about how do I get there? It talks about selflessness, but Tzu Chi's way and path naturally puts the self away. It puts the self away the moment you begin to think about these kids. That's why Master eats so little, because she always says, how can I eat so much when I'm constantly thinking about the people that have nothing to eat? Now, unfortunately, I still eat a lot. And it's because I don't have enough of the compassion to always remember these people they're hurting. But if I do, the need to eat more in me will become to go less, and it will be more of selflessness to come out. So Master talked about that's one of the things that the Bodhisattvas practice. They always think about the people that need to be saved. And so the more they think about others, the less they think about themselves. So their minds are not stirred by worldly fame, fortune, or status. They're not thinking about, if I do this, I will raise my status. They're not thinking about, if I do this, I'll be world famous. But they're thinking about, what can I do to help these people? Right? So they do not keep track of gains and losses. They're thinking about, what can I do to help them? What can I do to better help them? What can I do to improve myself so that I can better help them? This is what Master thinks about, always. And that's hard. But at least, let me share with you, at least it's a lot more tangible. It's a lot more reachable than thinking about, oh, just keep your minds tranquil and peaceful. I don't even know how to get there, but I know how to get to a place where I'm willing to help others. I'm sure all of us probably had this opportunity or chances before where we're able to just, go to a Tzu Chi event or helping out, even though you're so tired, even though you're hungry, but you just said, okay, just one more minute. Let's finish all these things, get all the chairs stacked up, or, making sure the place is cleaned up, and then let's go rest, right? Same thing. That's when you begin to think about when your mind put other people in priority, okay? So precepts, samadhi, wisdom. To reach the state of tranquil and clear mind, you have to be free of attachment. So in Tzu Chi, how does Master teach us to do? Well, let's think about the people that are suffering. What can we do for them? What can we do to them so that they don't have to suffer anymore? The more we think about that, the less we think about ourselves. Okay? And with the more you think about, the less you think of yourself and what you want and what you need, the more clear-minded we are. And so that's one of the very tangible things that in Tzu Chi, that's why Tzu Chi matches with the Sutra of Infinite Meanings, because Sutra of Infinite Meanings tells you the goal, and Tzu Chi takes you to the goal. And that's why Master says, this is the essence of Tzu Chi, because that's the central ideology. Okay, next. So mind's clear and vast vows and unwavering. So now it talks about once you are set that you want to help these people, for example, you want to help the people in Mozambique, you want to help the people in Africa. Once you are set, don't be afraid that you can't do it. Just focus not on the things that you are so limited that you can't do anything, but believe that you have the capacity to reach out, believe that you can mobilize a lot of people, and believe that you can make a difference. That's what these great bodhisattvas do. And they have these great, vast vows. So with minds tranquil and clear, once you are not affected by what you want, but you're focused on these people, the people that are suffering, you're focused on their needs, you're focused on their problems, then you make this great vow and saying, I am going to turn around their lives and I'm going to make a difference. When Master made that vow, everyone felt it. And we naturally fall in line and we say, we're going to follow you. We're going to be your arms and legs. We're going to make this happen. right? And we're gonna hit problems, so you have to remain unwavering. So ordinary beings look at everything with a very narrow mind, right? But a bodhisattva's mind is very spacious. They're thinking about, I want to change the world, and they're so determined, and there's nothing that can, make them change their minds, right? Great clarity. So that's what this part is all about. Once you got there, don't be afraid to make the great vows to say, I want to do this. I want to change humanity. I want to change the current status in Africa or in Nepal or in India or even in Singapore or even in Taiwan. Don't be afraid to make this vow. As long as we're clear, as long as we know that this is not for my own good, as long as we know that this is for the good of the people that are suffering there, make this great stride forward and say, let's do it. That's why these people are great, because they're clear. Their minds are not affected by what their own greed and their desires. They're making their minds based on the need of the people, the need of the suffering, and then they're taking great strides to make it happen. Nothing can stop them, and they're going there full power, and that's what they did. And once they did that, they see vast, very different things, right? They see good things happening, and they see bad things happening. So all these things happen in front of them, and then from there, they learn from experience. They learn from their failures, and then they attain great wisdom. See, right here in the sutra, it says they attain great wisdom and completely understand all Dharma. This is saying things in a very, very kind and good way. But how did they attain great wisdom? You might want to ask, but Brother Joe, you only talk about that they're making great strides forward, but it didn't tell us how they attain great wisdom. Let me share with you how they attain great wisdom. They attain great wisdom by failing a whole bunch. They failed with so many tries, but they didn't waver. They knew that this is the right thing to do, but we need to continue on. I have this strong belief that we can save these people, and we got to do what's best for them. And let me just change our path. Let's just change our ways, and maybe we can just switch this a little bit, change a little bit here, and change a little bit there. We can make a difference. That's what Master did throughout the 58 years of Tzu Chi Foundation. There were so many things that was done through trial and error. Yeah, there was, Master was very, clear-minded. She knew that, she was not doing this for herself, but there were along the way mistakes that Master made. And she readily, admitted that there were the mistakes that she made. So it made her more careful and cautious, but it never stopped her from continuing on this journey. That's what she did. So that's how they attain great wisdom. Okay. Master said, every person's ability is different according to the desires and afflictions. But the Buddha opened infinite Dharma doors to suit their individual. So there's so many different things that you get to learn. If you're willing to learn, you will be able to learn from your failures. It's not like everybody was born. We have the capacity to become like Buddha, but the capacity is not the capacity to be smart or wise. The capacity is to learn from our failed mistakes, so that we learn and then we can become like the Buddha. That was it. And I think this is probably the biggest thing that the Buddha said. Why are we all equal? Because we all have the capacity to learn. We're all equal. You just learn better than I did. But if I were able to learn as good as you did, I will become as good as you too. But because we fail to learn, we fail to want to let go of ourselves and learn. And that's where we fail. So Master is taking us one step at a time. First, show us the role models, then taking us one step at a time to show us that we can become like them too. Okay, so the phrase infinite Dharma door does not mean that we have to understand every part of it. No, it doesn't mean that. But it just means that in this world, the worldly phenomena, everything that happens around us are actually the infinite Dharma doors that Buddha talks about. All the world, there's so many choices that we can make, but it's so different across the different worlds, different countries, different cities, different groups of people. that we will begin to learn slowly, trial and error, and then we will find out. By grasping this one truth, we understand this. Okay, so today our little lesson, right? I looked online and there was all these stories, right? So it talks about the world's most and least walkable cities, right? So it tells you right away that the world is a very different place. People like to walk and people like to drive their cars and people like to commute, and it's very difficult, right? Very different. So we look at this. Cities in America and in Canada, right? North America, they're clustered in the bottom, right? Mostly journeys by car. There's a triangle. The bottom left corner is mostly journey by cars. Everybody, right? Canada and America, all the cities are always toward the corner where they go everywhere with their cars, right? So the cars are the king, and less than 4% of people walk to work, and 5% take public transportation. So more than 90% of the people drive their cars. That's in Americas, right? North America, America and Canada, right? So now let's look at Asian, right? So few people drive in Asia's big cities, regardless of their income levels, regardless. Some of the most heavily used public transport system in the world are found in this region. So Asia, we're very different, right? We think about, well, first of all, our streets, they're not as wide and big as North America, right? The land is huge in North America. The cities in Asia are somehow always very narrow, very cramped, very smaller, right? So driving car is not going to be easy. So most of us, we don't. So if you look at all these cities, right, I circled them, right? There's Singapore, there's Taipei, Manila, and also Kuala Lumpur. So all these are the cities that we're very familiar with. They're already sort of more toward public transportation, less in the car, walking, cycling, not so much, depends, right? So already a huge difference. So telling these people what you want to tell them is going to depend on who these people are. If you're going to tell them about petroleum, right? Most people in Asian city, they will be able to adapt, but not so much in Americas because they drive all the time. That's where this is, Master talks about the infinite Dharma doors, because the world is very different. And when we're exposed to the world, we're exposed to very different kind of people. People that like to walk and people that like to drive. And people like to walk, not like to walk, and they don't want to drive. What do? They take the public transportation, right? So now we look at, Europe, right? Europe, very scattered, right? But mostly they either drive or they walk. They don't take public transportation, and therefore they have less development in public transportation. That's just how the society goes. So infinite Dharma doors means that there's so many different kinds of people. Look at how scattered these points are. All these cities, even though they're all in Europe, but these patterns are all over the place. That's what the Master talks about. That's what the Buddha talks about, the infinite Dharma doors. Every door leads you to a different kinds of people. And every different kinds of people leads you to learn different things. If you're willing to stay with them, if you're willing to work with them, if you're willing to learn from them, then that door becomes door of wisdom. If you're not willing to learn from them, even if you open the door, you'll get nothing. So like I said, to attain great wisdom, you do this by trial and error, by willingness to do it, by willingness to try to participate, to learn from this. Okay, so let's pick up our speed and distinguish. So right away, if you're willing to learn the different parts of the culture, to know the different parts of the people, then you can begin to distinguish. Oh, you like this because this is your upbringing. You like this because that's in your culture. You like this because that's what everybody does. You begin to able to be clear and apparent. You understand these people. You see who they are. And when you see enough of these different people, you begin to be clear about who the people are and all these distinguishing all the different features, right? You become very clear and apparent. So in the Sutra, it talks about these people are able to comprehend and distinguish the truth of nature and appearances. They begin to understand because they are able to stay with all these different kinds of people, right? Singapore or Malaysia, why do they always, why do there's so much spice in their food, right? And why do they always like to eat spicy stuff, right? So why is it, all these things, it becomes very apparent. Because once you do a little bit, comparison, once I went to Sichuan in China, and we know Sichuan has always liked the spicy food, but it's not exactly just spicy. They like the numbness in the spicy, ma la. The ma talks about numb. It numbs you. It's not just spiciness, it's numbing spice. And so why? Because, and the reason is because in Sichuan, it has always been very humid, very wet. And by eating these particular numbing spice, that it was about to help you getting rid of that humidity from your body. That's one of the reasons. So from their upbringing, they're able to, continue to eat these food to get rid of their humidity from their bodies. And then they're building up this tolerance to these spice. So all of a sudden, now we know Sichuan loves to eat spicy food. But that's all we remember. We forgot why. So the bodhisattvas, because they go into these people, they stay with these people, and then learn from these people the infinite Dharma doors that are willing to attain great wisdom. Because you stay with them, you learn from them, and you see them, you observe them, and you compare all the different people, that you become to comprehend and distinguish, right? Becomes very clear and very apparent. So you learn something, you understand it, you do it by trial and error. All these bodhisattvas, they become great, not because they were born great, but because they're willing to learn. And not because they're able to learn like a, number one student, because they're willing to suffer defeat of failure and then learn from it. And that's what this sutra is talking about. I mean, when it comes to the end, it's like, don't we always know this? Yes, we do. That's why the Buddha is telling you, we can be like Buddha too. Because if you are willing to learn from our mistakes, we'll be able to reach one day that we don't make any mistakes. But we're not there because we don't want to learn from our mistakes. Okay, so that's why all these parts are telling us, how do we make up the difference? Very simply, be willing to take that first step. Be willing to learn. Not be afraid of failure, and then learn from your failure. If you're willing to do this and unwavering for a long time, you will get there. That's what the Buddha is talking about. And that's the spirit of Sutra of Infinite Meanings. And as long as you're willing to do it, you will reach there too. Okay, so all these parts, right? So turning the Dharma wheel, that means that don't just stick to one part. The wheel turns, right? It's the wheel just spins. It's not always on this part, this certain parts that hit the ground. Imagine the wheel always rotating. The parts that they contact with the ground always rotates. It's never one part, never the same point. Why? Because with different people, there's always a different switch. People get mad on different things. People like different things. People dislike different things. So it's never the same point, but we're able to learn from it. And then we're able to continue. Okay, so all these things, turn the Dharma wheel, willing to learn. And even when we fail, we pick ourselves up and we continue to learn. We're not afraid of failure, but we're going to learn from our failure. That's what all this chapter is talking about. That's what it's talking about. The 80,000 Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, they're able to achieve greatness because they keep on learning. And how do they learn? They learn from their failure. And how do they learn from their failure? Because they set their minds. How do they know when they fail? They want to help people. But when the people they're helping didn't get helped, they know they failed. So then they go back to think about it, contemplate, what can I do better to help serve these people? Then they continue to improve, get better, and improve, and get better. And eventually, they will be able to achieve greatness. Such selflessness, just like Master Cheng Yen, didn't think about what I want, didn't think about what she wants or what she desired, but think about, what can I do for these group of people? What can I do for these people that are suffering? What can I do for these people that are coming to take refuge in Buddhism and try to learn? So that's what this is about. So lastly, and the last part, we're talking about recent issues. All these, the part about the Mideast, talk about Israel, Hamas, And I want to say, I don't want to, just make this into a politics talk, but this is something that is really clouding people's judgment, right? On the one hand, there are people that think that the other side is wrong, and this side thinks that the other side is wrong, and that's usually what happens. The society is becoming polarized. So we see the problem happening in the major colleges and universities, right? Columbia in New York, there's Harvard, MIT, their presidents of the school is getting axed because of wrong statements or not saying the right things. Things are happening, right? People are having different opinions and they're fighting. There's a lot of conflicts, right? So master, and this particular sutra is talking about how do we calm the people down. Let's focus on the people that need to be saved, not just these issues, but how do we help the people that are right now being affected by this, right? Either it's the refugees or it's the people that are affected. So the simplest thing is to not talk about the issues, but try to save these people. When you save enough people, then we will probably learn more about the issues. But by saving the people, we are opening up our hearts and minds to think more about not just the issues, but their people, their families, their fathers and sons, their daughters and mothers and wives. How do we save these people? So all these things are very important. So opening up this idea. Okay, so inspiration. So what we talk about today, let me quickly try to summarize it. First of all, believe that we can also achieve greatness. Inspiration and self-reflection through role models, seeing these people making us know that we could do it too. How did they achieve it? Well, these are the things that they did to achieve it. They're willing to learn, they're willing to fail, and they learn from their failure so that they don't make the same mistakes twice. And then they learn from their mistakes, they remember their mistakes, and they remember what they learned, and they continue to do this through a long, long time, and then you're going to achieve greatness. This sounds like the same thing that we probably been taught when we were young, but that's what this chapter, that's what this sutra is talking about. And guess what? Tzu Chi is exactly doing this. So we are now standing on the shoulder of giants because Master had walked through this already. And Master is coming back to us and said, I've walked through this path of failure. I failed before, so you don't have to. But we are going to fail because there are so many things that Master did not tell us and teach us. Just like there are so many things that Buddha couldn't tell us and teach us. But he just gave us a very general picture. Learn from your failure and don't be afraid to fail. When you are willing to learn from it for a long, long time, you're going to learn from it. You're going to achieve greatness just like these bodhisattvas, okay? So 80,000 individuals, they have all these qualities. And the most important thing is they're able to do this, continue to attain great wisdom because by practice, by learning, they're able to understand all the things that they come in contact with. And that's what they did. Okay, so I apologize for going a little bit over time, but at least we get through this part. Now, the sutra itself sounds a lot deeper, but in the essence of it, that's what it's trying to do. And Tzu Chi is actually the embodiment of this sutra. The sutra in the words and the writings sounds deeper, but Tzu Chi makes it so much simpler. Just do it, you will learn from it. And the more you do it, the more you learn from it. The more you learn from it, the more that you want to improve what you're doing. And that's the process forward. And that's called infinite Dharma doors ahead of you so that we can attain great wisdom. Thank you so much. And I hope today has been a good session for all of you. It's difficult because the content, there's a lot of things to cover. But at the end of the day, it's actually very straightforward. And I hope that we get that inspiration as well, that charge in us to know that we can be like Master Cheng Yen too. So why haven't we got there? Because many things that we fail, not just once, not just twice, we always fail at the same place because we didn't learn from it. So we need to learn from it. We remember our failures, and then we go from there. Okay. Thank you for today's time, and thank you for listening to the sharing. And I hope that if you got any feedback and comments, feel free to let me know. And we'll now be opening to the sessions in all centers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Brother Joe for this clear and very wonderful sharing. And wow, I think you have shared a lot of this interest idea. And to be honest, I was unable to write down all the important points you have shared. So I believe some of us are actually also unable to remember all the points. And likely some of us will have this question to ask Brother Joe also. So now we open to this Q&A sections, and everybody can for the online participants, you can just turn on your mic and ask question directly, or you may also write your question in the chat. And then for those, for all of us that in the hall here, maybe you can just raise your hand, and then we can pass you the mic.
Hi, Brother Joe. Yeah, my name is Kim Ling. I'm at Jing Si Tang now. So I have a questions, and I'm glad that the questions I have in mind pertain to the slides that you mentioned. I think today is quite it's quite an aberration, because I think today you're in gear 3, gear 4, maybe in gear 5. Okay, so maybe I go straight to the point. On page 162, one of your slides also mentioned that second paragraph, second sentence, that bodhisattvas do not have desires of their own, and their minds are not stirred, so and so forth. That's one part of it. And on the same page, the third paragraph, the second sentence, they also mentioned that bodhisattvas actually are not totally free of desires, because their desire is actually one aim, which is to attain Buddhahood. So actually, from an ordinary layman's point of view, just on the surface of reading, they are contradictory in sentences. But I chose, as a Buddhist practitioner, to believe that they are somehow, in a way, coexistence. That's how I would see that. It's just that layman like myself, as a Buddhist practitioner, we cannot see how they actually can coexist when on the surface it is simply contradictory, right? So and when on page 164 that I didn't see that you didn't literally mention, it also did mention that page 164, the paragraph, the last sentence, that mentioned that even the wish to attain Buddhahood is considered a kind of desire. Right. So when I put these things in perspective, I just find that there is contradiction from the surface, but there has to be an understanding, because they must have coexisted, and I think the 8,000 bodhisattvas, they managed to discern and let them coexist. So my point as a layman, right, and is to break your mind and seeking your view on how ordinary people like us, who are Buddhist practitioners, how can we see the means to attain such states of coexistence? First is the apprehension, and and at least to understand that this coexistence has a means to exist, right? But maybe I take some of my take, which you mentioned that probably it is a revelation for me in today's coverage by you, that the way Tzu Chi carry out activities that we are participating is in fact a means of having empathy as the way forward. It's like a walking empathy, and that helps us to realize how do we not have desires, and putting the thoughts of how we are helping people to really put our self-desires aside. But that's one aspect. But when we put the three different aspects of desires, no desires with some desires, where's the means where we as a layman can see and better understand its coexistence, that is quite important, and where's our way forward? Is just the middle path alone, or there are stages in this lifetime that we can understand before we can aspire to reach the stage of the bodhisattvas? I'm sorry, I may be talking a bit too long. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a loaded question. Thank you for asking. I think this is it is great to point out these things. You're just I'm just like where you are, right? I still there are so many things that I read and I'll be questioning myself. This is an obvious paradox or obvious contradiction, yet it's not, like you mentioned, right? We know something is sort of different, but it sounds just not right. Okay, so let me try to explain this to the best of my ability. And I'm not there yet, so I'm only explaining to you the way as logical, as reasonable, as rational that I can try to make it. I believe that this is talking about different stages. You can't merge all of them and talk about it at the same time. There are different stages. For example, you use candies or you use dessert to lure kids to do good things. Are they doing good things because they want the sweets, or are they doing good things because they want to do good things? Now, during that stage, it is important that they focus on that sweets, and then they will do the things that you want them to do. But once you get there, and then you sort of teach them, that transformation is necessary. But to us, if you collapse all of them, you'll be like, no. They are looking for the sweets. But you forgot about the transformation, that they're transforming from wanting to achieve something to I'm actually doing this without selfness. That's the very difficult part about. So that part, if you collapse all of them, you just talk about sweets and doing the good thing, then you're going to be thinking, well, these kids are doing good things only because they want the sweet. They want to be, they don't want to be punished. Or the other way around is you punish kids for doing the wrong things. Are they not doing it because they're afraid of being punished? Or do they know that they should not do the bad things? So don't collapse them. It's a drawn out process. And you are constantly reevaluating. You're starting at the point that you want to do something, make something of yourself. Yet along the way, the process will change you ever so slightly, that you're transforming from trying to do this thing to better myself to slowly, the percentage begin to shift, 80%, 20% change, the split slowly becomes 70-30, slowly becomes 60-40. That's the transition. That's why it takes a long time for us to realize the very, very minute difference that's happening within us. That's the process. So that's why it's hard. When you're reading all these sutra and it sounds like it's contradictory. Yes, but if you imagine that it takes thousands of years to reach there, then every step they take, it's not so contradictory. Who I was last year versus who I will be 10 years from now will be very different. When I was young, I was thinking this way. When I'm mature, I think this way. When I'm old, I will be thinking this way. But if you collapse them all, you are the same Joe, right? Your name is still Joe. So why did you think this way? And then you're thinking this way. There's a contradiction. But if you take this time out, you're still Joe, but you're 10 years old. You're Joe at 50 years old, and you're Joe at 80 years old. They're going to be very different. There's no contradiction when that happens, when you take the time and drawn out. So in Buddhism, that's why it talks about unwavering. That goal never changes, but the way we think and the way we act slowly changes. It's the process that changes you slowly. It's not the end goal. The end goal didn't change. The way didn't change. It's us, the mind, that is slowly changing. And that's why it's very, very important that all throughout all this, it keeps on talking about contemplation, the clear mind. Don't be drawn into the things that we're doing to be attached, but think about, what are we doing? Think about, what am I doing? Why did I like this? What did I get out of this? Always be contemplating, and then you will be able to see the finer differences between who you are today and who you were yesterday. And that's where all the contemplation happens. So that's why, this is a great question. if you think about this, right? You collapse the time, who you were 10 years ago, or when you were 10 years old, you would, the same choices in front of you. There will be, a video game, some apple pie, the food that you like, and something, homework, right? 3 things for you to choose. You would choose something when you're 10 years old. You would choose something different when you're 50. And then you go like, oh, you're contradicting yourself. Obviously, because we grew, because we're changing. So I think that's very important. So obviously, we're talking about different stages, number 1. Number 2, and I always think that I think the words are very difficult to explain because some of these things are so finite, they're so minute that you cannot use words to explain. Buddhism has always been talking about the cultivation of your mind. But our minds are so difficult that it's not discrete. It's not like you're 0.2 and that's 0.3 and your difference is 0.1. In mathematics, we call it discrete in that, the very, all these points, all these points are very discrete. There's 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and everyone is different by 0.1. Yet we know that it's not just 0.1, 0.2. There's 0.001, 0.00001, and there's infinitely small points plotting, right? So the reason why I mentioned this is that it's very hard to identify all the different small things that we had to do to accumulate to become greatness. So that part is very difficult to explain. So when you put into words, it's all called desire, right? The desire to help and the desire to enjoy our bodily joys. That's the same word, but it's actually different. What it was trying to say is the Bodhisattva have this desire, and that desire is called driving force. There is a driving force, driving Bodhisattva toward that goal. Just like there is a driving force driving us to eat the food that we like. And that driving force is the same. But the Bodhisattvas use that driving force for the betterment of other people, while we use this driving force for the betterment of ourselves. That was the only difference. So the whole point is that desire or that driving force is the same. The only difference is how do you use this force to do the betterment of the whole and the betterment of yourself. Yet, at the end, when you do this for the betterment of the whole, it's actually to better yourselves. So when you collapse the time, it becomes you're doing this to better yourself. Now it becomes contradiction. But if you draw out the time, you started by you're driving yourself to do the goodness for yourself. And then you reach the middle, you're doing this for the betterment of other people. And then you reach the end, it comes full circle. You're helping others. And then you realize you are the one that get the most. And then it becomes you're bettering yourself. So these are the 3 different spots. The journey is important. But if you collapse the time, you started with betterment of yourself, you ended with the betterment of yourself, isn't there a contradiction? So that's how I'm able to explain. It's not a contradictory if you draw out the time, and it's a process. It's a slow and an inching process to slowly advance toward that much betterment of who we are. And yet, if you collapse it, it looks like you started out by saying you don't want to do this, and then you ended up still getting there. So you're telling me, should I do this or should I not do it, right? But it's a process, it's a drawn out process. So I hope this sort of answers your question, but that's how I am able to explain it. There's so many things that seems to be contradictory, but it's not quite, because you have to take it out in a drawn out, a process.
Thank you so much for filling the void. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else, or anybody would like to add to that? I'm glad to. Anybody that would like to add to that. If you think this is deep, it's actually deep only because we make it deep. but it's actually quite straightforward. Let me share with you that as far as that, you probably know a lot of Indians too, people from India, and it is and I know I used to work with a lot of people from India in the United States, because I was in the IT industry, and there's a lot of computer programmers. They're from India, right? And so, and when we talk about it, they're very discreet. It's like, they're very good in mathematics and logic and reasoning, because they're able to cut the things, slices so small, and they're able to break down all the the SOP, right? The procedures. They're able to break, if you're able to break into 10, they can break into 100. And they're very procedural about this. That's why you see all these numbers in Buddhism, because that's how Buddha teaches. Buddha was from India too, right? So they were able to be so logical in breaking all these very finite, very small pieces of difference, and they're able to break it down. So it's very difficult for us. It's almost like if you're very trained, you're able to tell two different colors. That's very small difference, but they're able to tell. Or if you're a good wine tasting, you taste this wine and you can tell this is 1970 and that's 1969. Well, how the heck did you know there's a 1 year difference? You don't. To us, it's hard to know, but to those people that can taste it, they know. So it's hard for us to just know that, oh yeah, sure. So the untrained people is this, and the great bodhisattvas are like this. There's really no difference. They still all have the desires, but to the trained people, they just cut it down so fine slice. But here in Tzu Chi, it's a lot simpler, because we're Chinese and we don't go into these fine things. And master, in the background of Taiwan, in the backdrop of Taiwan culturally, the simpler the better. And so master devised the way that's called Tzu Chi to help us to make all these things a lot simpler. Okay, thank you. There was another long ranting. Thank you.
Thanks, Brother Joe, for this answer to explanation to this question. I think we all learned a lot of from this contradicting sentence from the books. But yeah, it's very, very informative. But I think the time is almost up, and then we need to reserve some time for the for people in the yeah, we need to have some time for our this internet discussion. So we thanks this Brother Joe for today's this sharing. Okay, so okay, there are really a lot of points this Brother Joe have shared with us, and then with the help of this some brother and sister, I just able to write down some this key points from the sharing. So we are all have the same potential capacity to achieve the greatness, this wisdom or this Buddhahood. So including all sincere being, but giving this sentence actually giving us hope and inspiration from. Yeah. Okay, and then form this aspiration and wealth to achieve them. Okay, and then we need to be mindful to avoid hurting others unknowingly, and this creating negative cause, karma. So precepts are actually to protect us. Yeah. So although we actually we have this equally this potential to become this Bodhisattva, but there is something that put us apart from this Mahasattva. So the Mahasattva that mentioned in the beginning of this sharing, they are actually keep open minds and then make great wealth, this and least lead accordingly, and not be affected by the surrounding and the and desire. So there are some of the these these are some of the points that of this Mahasattva that we may learn from them. Yeah, okay. I think there's some the point that I was able to note down for to conclude this today's sharing. So we thanks these online participants, and then we are going to end this online sharing. So brother and sister, let's rise. Okay, please put our palms together and pray to Buddha and Master Cheng Yen. First bow, second bow, third bow. And thanks to all these online participants, you may now leave the this meeting room.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Joe. It's always inspiring. So we are all, well, we have benefited much from your sharing, and we will continue with our discussion here offline.
Thank you.
So
Thank
that
you.
we can enhance more. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
感恩.
Good night.
Good night.